Thank you.
Pam or Trisha, can you let me share my screen again, please?
Yep. There you go.
Holy crap, I have a lot of screens open right now.
Well, because all the times we were trying to get into the meetings.
Yeah, I was like, there's a lot of stuff happening here. All right. All right. So we are just, like I said, we're going to just go through these last 15 minutes of slides. I want to kind of go through them. Then we're going to go through the live sample, and hopefully we'll just open that live sample up to anybody that's asking questions, and we can kind of get more specific as necessary. So we're going to start with this gear icon that we were talking about in the previous view. So we're going to start here with your company. So the ones that we have in a little box, we're going to address a little bit further in the live version. But we'll go over account settings, manage users, how you can customize your forms, what your chart of accounts looks like, and what QuickBooks Labs is. So starting here, your accounts and settings, this is where you would have all your company information that you want to show on the invoices or your POs or estimates. It gives you your company name. It's a good place to store your EIN number for when everybody's asking for it and you kind of forget, so it's easy access to have that there. You can input your logo in here. You can have your company type, your industry, so it becomes more specific to you. Your company email that you want to show up on the forms. So when you are sending a form out, you want to be able to use that particular email. Any phone number, any website address that you would like on there, and any legal address with your company. This is just where, do you want to get emails from Intuit about new products and whatnot? Do you want them every day, or do you want to just do it for the important privacy stuff? And that's where you would kind of set those preferences here. Your usage is just depending on which service you've chose, you get a certain amount of billable users and you're able to use a certain amount of accounts. This just kind of gives you a quick overview of how many of those you're using. So if you were up here on your chart of accounts and you knew that you needed every single one of them and you needed to add 10 more items so your profit and loss looks good, you would know if you were close to your limit and would need to upgrade, or if you can just delete some stuff. That's kind of there. And this is here for your billable users. Depending on which one you have, you'll have 1, 3, 5 billable users you're allowed to have. Your accountant users do not count towards this. Going into your sales, this is just how you want your sales estimates, your sales receipts, your invoices to look. So anything that's customer facing, you would change here. So you can have your preferred deliveries for those invoices if you want them to be all emails, if you'd rather prefer them to be printed. If you would like to have everybody have net 15 terms, net 30, net 60, you can change them here. Nobody really does shipping on their invoices, but you could put them there and it will show, you can have a drop down that says shipped by FedEx, shipped by UPS, USPS, etc. Custom fields we'll go over later. Custom transaction numbers, those are the same thing that you can just exactly that, make them whatever you want. If you need them to be NZK123, you can start them off that way. Your service date, these are good for electricians, plumbers, construction industry people, where you bill out on a certain date, but you did the work 2 weeks ago. That kind of just shows up on your invoice, so you're able to do that. If you want discounts or not, you can turn them off. If you are a restaurant or anybody that has to record tips or gratuities, you can turn that on and off, and you can turn tags on and off. Most people don't do anything with this tip. Then we go down to products and services, and this is where you can just turn off certain things that you need. If you're gonna track quantities of them, if you're going to track inventory or not. If you need a SKU column on your invoices, this is how you would shut them on and off. And I actually, as I'm going through this whole thing, I did not point out that over here, this little pencil, that's actually how you turn them on and off. These are the sections, the little pencil, you would click on it, and then you just have little toggle switches or a drop down depending on what you're looking for. The next one, late fees. If you want to charge, late fees for any invoices that are due after 30 days or 60 days or any time after your preferred terms, you can have it automatically charge them. Progress invoicing, again, you can turn it on and off. These are really good for construction, landscaping type of industries where you get a deposit, then you get an invoice, you get a payment for 25%, halfway through or whatever. This is an easier way to do it because you're basing it off of one invoice, multiple invoices off of one estimate versus having to continue to make each invoice every single time you do it. You can have your default messages and your default invoice reminders. You can have it say anything that's particular to your industry or to your business in particular. If you're not one that says, hello, please send payment when you want to, you can be like, hi, this is so-and-so. We noticed that your, invoices are past due. Please send them, via OWL, whenever you want. Type of thing. So you can kind of have it a little bit more fun, a little bit more just not so humdrum, whatever. If you don't care, then it's perfectly fine. It has a generic invoice default that just says your invoices are past due. Please submit payments as soon as possible. And then your statements, it just shows you, down here, you can change how you want your statements to look. And this is actually, again, so I went a little too far with my little descriptions. So that when you go into that little pencil, and it will show up where I told you that you'll end up with a drop down or a little toggle switch, depending on what you want to do. This is what your screen looks like. You also have all these little question marks for what they are. So if you didn't know what a service date was, that it gives you a little pop-up that tells you this is what it is. And then you decide if you need it or not. Hit save, cancel to X out and go to something else, and then you're good to go. And then this is where the messages are. Again, your little pencil screen, your messages, you can choose whatever greetings that you want. You can use their full name, their first name. You can use this for specific items. So you could use the same wording and message for the invoice, for the estimate, for a sales receipt, or you can change your wording for each individual item for those. You can email yourself a copy just to be sure that your customer has got it. You can mail just so you can see that it went through. And then the same thing here, you can blind copy or you can blind copy yourself to a specific thing. You can do, and this would go to everyone. So that's one thing you want to make sure you share of too. If you're changing it in here, this is going to be every single time you have an invoice that goes out, it's going to blind copy whoever you chose. So that would be an instance of maybe if you had a sales department that needed a copy of it or a customer service department, you would kind of just blind copy them. They'd have their stuff and you're good to go. Over here, it's how you have the option to see how your customer is able to view it. So QuickBooks will send an email and it will say, so-and-so sent you an invoice, here's the amount, here's, view, there's a little button that says view and pay, and they can just automatically click there. Sorry, today is one of those days where the cats are gonna try to get in the way. Or so you can have that so it just says view, and then they can go on and they view it and they can download it there from online, or you can give them the option to have a PDF to be attached. A lot of the times I find that most customers like this PDF attachment. All right, So the next thing is that we're going to do the vendor side. It has the same types of things that you have on the sales, except for this is just your vendor facing. So this is any bills, purchase orders, and that go on. And so you can just see, do you need purchase orders on and off? Do you have any default messages? Do you want to track expenses? Do you need anything to be billable or not billable? Do you want to shut tags off because you don't need them? That all happens on the screen. Again, this is the same. It looks pretty much the same as your sales side and your customer side, except for this time it would be for a vendor. So you could say, here's a purchase order, you know, we're looking for 25 of these items, etc. And you have the same options to CC, to BCC, email yourself on just every one of them, and hit save and close. This is your time tracking for when anybody that uses it for payroll. It just determines, actually I take that back. So this is the time of how your QuickBooks is going to say what your first day of the week is, and then if you use timesheets for payroll. So it's going to say, do you need to use a service field? Are you going to allow the time to be billable to your customers? So if you were in a timesheet and you saw that something wasn't billable, this is where you would go in and kind of change that to say that it's to check to see if it's on or off.
Hey, Crystal,
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
a question. I have a question on the messages. So it says, when you were talking about the messages on the invoices, do the messages apply to everyone? So if I put a company name in there, a company's name who is not the one I added would see the wrong email. Does that make sense?
Kind of. So in this screen, this is your default for your business. So every invoice that you send out would have this invoice phrase attached. Please remit at your earliest convenience, Craig Landscaping, right? If you were in an individual invoice on the customer side and created one and then hit send, right, you can change that to whoever you want, or if you had a misspelling or the wrong customer or something like that, that's where your customer would see it.
Okay, he said thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So back to advanced. This is just going to be, do you need account numbers for your chart of accounts? When does your fiscal year start? Because some people are January, some people are September, some people are July. So not everybody's the same. If you're a cash or accrual basis, if you want to close the books at the end of the year and not allow anybody to change them or at a given specific time, you would turn that on and off here. Your chart of accounts is if you, again, if you get that tips comes up, if you do use tips, you're telling QuickBooks where to point it to and what category you want it to be under. If you want to be able to track classes or locations, you could do that here. This comes in handy for when you want to apply credits automatically for a customer. So if you had a customer that, you know, you returned an item and you had a credit on there and you get issued the credit, it's going to say when this invoice is due and you go to receive payment, it's going to say you have $1,000 invoice, there's a $500 credit, it's going to apply it automatically, and so therefore you should have a check for $500. A lot of times that comes in handy, it's just very useful, sometimes it's not, so you have the opportunity to shut it off here. You can shut off projects as well if you are, again, this is more, I find people use this more in that construction landscaping industry. They're going to do it by project to invoice their customer, use progress invoicing, that is, etc. This is down here is if anybody had multi-currency, you could turn it on. Or if you were somewhere outside of the United States, you can say what your home, your home currency is. If you were using the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar, you would let QuickBooks know that here. And then there's some other basic stuff of just, what do you want your customer label to look like? What do you want your dates to look like? Your numbers. If you want to have QuickBooks give you this big this nice pop-up that says, there's duplicate check numbers, duplicate invoice numbers. Would you like to change? That's where you would change them. And then if you need it to sign you out, you can change those options here. Just users, this is how you would change your add and subtract your users. We'll go through this in the live one real quick so I can show you that you can specify what somebody uses and what they can see and what they can't see. So if you had somebody that worked in your office, you want them to see your customer side, but not your vendor side, or you don't want them to see your bank register, you can change all of that. But you would, just like everything else, when you go in to add your new users that are not yours and that are not the first admin that gets assigned to you when you sign up QuickBooks, you would just hit the add user here. And like I said, in the live version, we will go through that real quick. And then you have accounting firms as well. So if you had a outside bookkeeper or an outside accountant, you can have them both have their own logins. You can have up to 2. QuickBooks Labs is kind of the play. You don't have to use them. You could use them if you think that they kind of work. It's kind of the new and improved stuff that's a beta version for QuickBooks. So if they're got something going and they think that people are going to use it, they would use your QuickBooks Labs, and you can kind of use these, turn them on and off if you think they're usable for you. The thing was, they don't, a lot of the times what you find in QuickBooks Labs will go into just a regular version of QuickBooks at some point in the future, but sometimes they don't. So if you turn them on and you're using something, there is always the possibility that QuickBooks will turn them off, but they always send you emails to let you know that prior. And this changes every so often. Every time that they have a new thing that they want to play with, they'll take some things out, they'll add some things. So this is constantly changing for different things. And then when we go live, we're just going to talk a little bit about what the lists that you can do, your reoccurring transactions, if they're invoices, if they're expenses, if they're checks, how to set up all of those, where to see your attachments, what you can do with them, custom fields and tags as well. And then we'll do the same thing with tools. This is just kind of how you would reconcile your bank statement. If you have an advanced version and you're able to do budgeting, you'll be able to see a different budget report. Everybody will have an audit log, which is kind of cool for you to see, like, who's deleting things or who's changing things. You're able to go in and say, okay, this happens to be happening often, and it happens to be happening with so-and-so, and then you kind of know, hey, there needs to be some conversation, some kind of training to say, this is what we're doing as a, we can't have you delete them, or you should be deleting them or whatnot. So at least the conversation can happen. SmartLook I don't use. I really honestly don't know a whole lot about it. It's a new QuickBooks Online thing. You basically get a code for customer service, and then you get to correct it. You can get connected to a customer service person when you have to call, and if you have to. Instead of calling and talking to one person and then calling a second time talking to another person, they're trying to make it so you talk to the same person all the time by giving that code, and they can connect you. I have no idea if it works or not. I don't have anybody that's ever used it to know if it's helpful. The Resolution Center is kind of helpful though, because if you have multiple issues with your QuickBooks file, you can go into the Resolution Center and see where it stands with Intuit and how they're looking to fix it for you, or how it was resolved. All right. Do we have any questions before I move into the live one?
I've got one in the chat. It says, Smart Looks is just to share your screen with a QuickBooks Pro.
Okay, so it's a share your screen type of thing. So when I was reading about it, thank you for that. When I was reading about it, it was saying that it was to help link you with customer service, but that's good to know. All right. So now we'll go into the live version. I'm gonna move this over so then we could, so I know what we're looking
I
at
think
here.
you might need to unshare and then reshare in the in Explorer or Chrome, because we're still seeing the presentation piece.
All righty, thanks. How about that one?
There we go.
Okay. All right. So we were going to start using some of these tools, I guess is where we'll start. You can go this import data. You will see, I can't really show you how to import your data, but if you were on QuickBooks Desktop and you need it, you say it backed up your file, you made sure everything was good, you would click this import data or import. I take that back. It was the M1 underneath it is your import desktop data. This one is your import your Excel spreadsheets or your Google sheet. So if you had a customer list that did not come from your desktop, QuickBooks Desktop, or you did not use QuickBooks Desktop previously and you had multiple spreadsheets or some other version of this, you're able to take your customer list, your vendor list, your chart of accounts, any invoices and any products or services that you had listed. If you have those in a Google Sheet, a CSV, or an Excel file, you are able to upload them into QuickBooks Online, so you don't have any, anything doesn't get duplicated, you don't have to manually put in every single customer that you have, etc. So we could just do a customer list, and this is where I was talking about where you would go and you'd find one. You know, you can look at your Google Sheet and see if there's an issue. Here, the only thing I would point out to anybody that is looking to import any kind of CSV or Excel file into QuickBooks Online, make sure you take the time in the very beginning to look at what the fields are in QuickBooks Online and the fields that you have on your spreadsheet. The time you take in the beginning to make sure that each column is where it's supposed to be and everything is set up properly, the easier the import ends up being for you. You can save yourself a lot of time and hassle just by taking a few minutes to compare the two, make sure you have the right columns, make sure that they're named properly or have the right spacing, and then you're good to go. So this one, you would just have this file with your customer names, your company name, what are they, you know, their email, you can have their phone number, their address on there as well, and it will give you the information, and then you can just hit disconnect or browse, and it will upload it. You'll get this map data, and it will say, where do you want it to go? So you want it to say address equals address, town equals city, etc. And then you just go to import and you're good to go. And each one of these, when you go to each of these screens, you'll do that by hitting this next down at the bottom. And then when I first started saying is that where I had them backwards is that this is where the second one is where you would import your desktop data. The screen, you know, looks a little bit different, but you do have a little, you have a video that will show you how to do it. It gives you an opportunity and you get a little screen that says browse, find your thing, find your QuickBooks file. You can upload it, you know, by hitting next a couple times, and then it should be good to go. If you have everything clean in your desktop file, you should not have any problems switching, you know, to QuickBooks Online. The only advice I can give you is to make sure you run a balance sheet and a profit and loss in your desktop file. Once your import is done into QuickBooks Online, run a profit and loss and run a balance sheet real quick and just make sure the numbers match. You know, you want to make sure that whatever information you had in desktop really did transfer over to QuickBooks Online. It's rare that you have a problem, but it's kind of good to know. That's just your double check to make sure all the information really did go through. If you're going to export data, you know, it gives you this little thing here that shows why do you want to export it. This is really just for Intuit's information. So this is just showing, you know, do you just trying to get tax and get the backup? Are you switching? You can choose something and hit continue, or you can just close out of it. You don't have, it's not mandatory that you answer. And then it's saying which lists would you like to export. You can toggle on and off of which ones you do or which ones you don't, and then hit export to Excel. And it takes a couple minutes, but then you get a whole list of what you're looking for, of what you're trying to balance looks like, any journal entries that you've made, general ledgers. Sometimes this comes in handy if your accountant doesn't have access to QuickBooks Online, or they're kind of old school and they don't want to use it. Being able to export the actual data and why things were put where they were is helpful to them. And sometimes you just need, on this other side, sometimes you just need to know what your customer list is for Salesforce or for a different program, a third-party program. And this is where this would come in handy. And you just click on and off which ones you want, which ones you don't. You can export it to Excel. Reconcile. Right, so the next one, I just want to make sure we're going through my list. Sorry. If you were to reconcile your bank statement, you should be doing this every month. You want to make sure that what's imported from the bank has downloaded into QuickBooks. The more information you have, the more correct it is, the better off you are in order to get loans, just being able to make your own internal cash flow decisions, etc. So here you would go up here, go to reconcile. You don't only on the first time do you have that screen that I just clicked, but after that you will just see this. You choose which account you have. So if you had a savings account, a checking account, some credit cards, you could choose whichever one was appropriate. Your beginning balance, you want to make sure that it matches what your bank statement is. The ending balance you would get from your bank statement. And then you want to put the date that those statements end. You can do this. Ultimately, you want to do this on a monthly basis, and you want to do 1 month at a time, so it's easier for you to track and easier for you to go back and find out if something's missing or not missing. You can, however, do this a couple months at a time. You don't have to necessarily have it every single month. You could do a couple months as long as you have the bank statement. And you just hit start reconciling. And you get a screen like this. All these things show up every time. When you guys do this, it's just little directions of if you want to try to change something, if you want to, you can always click this don't show message again and just close out of it. Or it will continue popping up, whichever you prefer. So once you are in this screen, this is where you would end up just start reconciling and start checking things off. These numbers are clearly not going to match when this difference because I did not use a specific one to match this. I just kind of made the number up. But you would go down the list and choose whichever expenses and deposits that you made that they match your bank statement. And as you're clicking, you will notice that the difference ends up going up or down depending on what you clicked, what you didn't click. You want that number to be 0. So as I said, this will never happen, because of the numbers that I used, but this number would be 0. It will say cleared. You get a green check mark, the little green thing here. And then it will say, and then you're able to do, finish now. And then you move on to either the next one or your credit cards or whatever else you have to do for your bank's rec. You can save this for later. So if you were starting to do this and then you realized it's 2:30 and you're going to have to go pick up your child from school or some after school thing, and you're ready to go and you don't have time or you have a call, you can have all this stuff clicked, try to do something so you know where you saved, on the paper, and then you can hit save and later. And then the next time you're done, ready to go, it will say, do you want to continue to reconcile it? And you can do that. Pam, there seems to be a lot of questions a lot of the times with bank recs. Are there anything in the chat for that?
No, not at the moment, but I would add that if you downloaded your transactions from the bank, anything that fits in your time frame will automatically get that check mark. And so it is possible when you go in here that you will see that it balanced and you get the green check mark and the difference is 0. I did have someone actually do that last week.
You know, everything's fun, you know, and that's where I think where things, they do get a little confusing sometimes if you're not used to them for exactly that. It depends on exactly what you said is the time frame, because you can do it on the 10th of the month. It doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the month. It just, as long as it matches whatever it is that you're looking for as a bank statement or what's on your bank account.
I did get a question. It says, should you always save for later until you get the green check mark? If you're going to leave and come back, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You know,
and if you find here, if you find here that you have a typo and you want to go back and fix it, what's the easiest way for someone to go back and fix it?
So I just click on it and it brings up this edit. You can either go in and edit or you can just override it here. Sometimes it gives you a little pop-up and says you can't do it. Most of the time it allows you, like I just did.
Okay.
But it will do the same thing if you go into edit. It just brings up your expense screen and you can change it back. You can add something, whatever you wanted to do. And then if you just hit save and close, I knew that wasn't going to work because I added it, and the reason why that didn't work is because I added it and it doesn't have the right amounts in here. Yeah. So it didn't match. But you would want to save it. And then when you came back here, it would show that you went from 250 to 300.
Great, thank you.
All right, so that's pretty much it for reconciling. You would just kind of click here, you go through your date. Actually, since I'm talking about it, you may, if you for some reason have gone through and you realize in this situation, so say, I'm going to unclick these for December. So say we know for a fact that it ended November 30th instead of December 31st, and my balance is still coming off different, right? I've made sure that everything is checked. I have made sure that everything is exactly what it's supposed to be. There is no typos. There's no anything like that. Check here, clear your filters, because sometimes if you have your bank reconciliation, if you have your bank statements downloading into QuickBooks, sometimes you find down here, there are things that are already like checked, and you want to make sure that you just uncheck them because they are after your statement date. All right.
I got another one.
Okay.
Sometimes I get a duplicate expense when I pay off a credit card bill. It will appear twice under expenses. Should I delete the duplicate or void so my accountant is able to see it?
There's nothing wrong with either one of those. The more important thing is to try to find out why you have the duplicate and fix it that way. So if you have something that's being duplicated because it's being downloaded from your credit card statement into QuickBooks, and then you're manually doing it, you want to make sure that your internal system for you to manually do it or double checking what's downloaded, you want to fix that issue. And then as long as that is fixed, you're good to go, and it just happens to be a one-off mistake or something that happens a couple times a year, you can go in and delete it, and it's perfectly fine as long as the first one is in the right categories. You know, as long as they're exactly the same and they're accounting for it properly, you can go in and delete it. The only time I would go in and void it, or I would make a deposit to offset it, is if it was in a previous year. Or if it was in a closed time period, you want your accountant to be able to see what happened and why. Does that answer that?
I think so.
All right, so we did this, did the reconciling. Oh, batch deposits. Pam, when we wrote batch deposits on here, are we talking how we were talking about undeposited funds? And
Yes.
okay.
Yes, because I use the term batch deposits because people wouldn't necessarily know what using undeposited funds would be. So when we're grouping them together, that was my thought.
Okay, that's fine. Since I've gone off, I didn't go in order for this list. So
That's okay.
I just figured that while I was here, I might as well show the right thing. So if you are going into where we were talking about undeposited funds, or you had multiple checks that you were depositing as one amount into the bank statement, you want to go here, new bank deposit. And this is where you choose the check. You know, we can make it that I did it on Friday. I received both of these checks. So this is the amount that I deposited into the bank account on Friday. And then I can hit save and new. You know, and then a different option would also be that if I knew I took some cash and I received this in here and it was under owner's equity. Oh, that's not an option here. All right, well, I don't like that. Okay, so let's pretend it was an insurance refund. Refund for workman's comp. You know, so I wrote myself a little note for this one in particular to know what it was for. It goes back into the insurance company, and then it was for $250. That's where the difference is, where I would be adding in any kind of different things that was not already recorded in QuickBooks. And then when you hit save and close or save and new brings you the new one. Save and close will bring you to the register. And you can see that deposit has split amongst multiple items versus it being something simple like this one that just came from Freeman Sports. All right, no questions in regards to how to undeposited funds and to put that in?
Nope, nothing came up.
Perfect. All right. So let's go tools. I will go back into your item, all these lists here. So if you go into lists, you have definitely different options of if it's a customer list, if it's a vendor list, if it's a product list. So if you're looking for something specific that is not already here, because these are the most popular ones, you would go into all lists. And this just brings up what they are, you know, what kind of lists that you have, what you're able to do. So if you had any custom fields for, say, sales reps, you know, service, you know, an additional service date or a service technician, you know, label in there, you would go in here, custom fields, add it, label it for whatever you needed it to be labeled. You know, and then this will show, do you want it to show on your sales forms or do you need it to show on your purchase orders? So in this one, we would do sales forms. We do want it to print on the form for the customer to be able to see, and then you're able to hit save. And so now this will show up. What does it show up on or what does it not show up on? And you're able to go in and edit as necessary if there's, actually I would take that back. It's only just sales items that you can change here. You know, but you would also be able to say, if this was something that you no longer used, after, you know, a year or 2 years, whatever the time may be, you hadn't hit this drop down list and make something inactive. You can also, from this screen, go up here, add a field and add something new.
While you're talking about making something inactive, I had a question and I think I answered it. It said someone was putting in a debit card payment and they got a message that said something you're trying to use has been made inactive. check the fields with accounts, customer item, vendors, or employees. And my response was that most likely, since it was a debit card, either the account or the vendor was made inactive, and she should go back to the chart of accounts and look for that account name and see if it was inactive, or the list of vendors and look for that.
Correct. Yep, that's exactly the correct answer. So most of the time, occasionally it will be your vendor that you use is inactive. A lot of the times it goes back to chart of accounts. So if you were in here under your chart of accounts, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go down to some of these, just random. I'm going to unclick some random things. So if this was inactive, of course, it's not going to let me do that one.
Of course.
Oh, seriously. Okay, that one worked. So we made that one inactive, and you went to go try to use it. It's going to just give you that pop-up of what, going on. You don't see it here. Up here in this little gear thing, you can check include inactive or not, and then it will show you everything. So we're back down here where it says sprinklers and drip systems. I deleted it. You can go back over here and make it active again. And it will just show up on your regular list. You can also get the opportunity when that pop-up comes, it does give you the option to say, do you want to just use it once? And you can hit use once and then just be done with it, because it will still show up on your profit and loss reports and any other reports that are necessary within the right time frame. You just inactivated it, most likely because it's a category that's either been duplicated or something, the wording's not right, something that you just don't want to use in the future.
Okay. And then another question, does making it inactive remove it from prior forms?
No. Nope. As I said, it will still show up on your reports. It just makes it so you can, it doesn't give you an option of if you were in a bill or in that debit card transaction, it just doesn't show up as an option for you to use. All right, so this kind of transitions us into chart of accounts anyway. So as we went in there, you got into that all list, you've gone into your chart of accounts. This is everything that you're using that shows up on your reporting, your any of those accounts that are for your balance sheet, your profit and loss, mainly. It uses all those other reports, you use everything, but these are the ones that will show up of what is owed to you, what is you owe, what kind of assets you have, and what you've spent in expenses. So you have multiple options here. If you were looking at them, this is how you would set up your new ones. QuickBooks, when you first set up, it gives you a bunch of questions and tries to give you the generic chart of accounts for your industry. You can go in and change whatever you need to change or add or whatnot, and you would do that by here. So you can do new. You choose what it is. If it's just another asset, is it a credit card? Is it a loan from the bank? Is it a new income that you want to track? Is it something that's not in regards to your regular income? But it's another income. So a lot of this other income, a great example being the last couple of years, is like a PPP loan forgiveness. That has nothing to do with your business and your everyday income, but it is an income that you need to track in order to say, hey, why was this money on my profit and loss this particular year so much more? You would want to use something like that in other income. Yeah. And then you just get cost of goods and expenses here. So you can choose whatever it is that it happens to be. Your detail type here is you're going to say, is it a checking account? Is it what is it? So is this the money marketing, checking, savings, etc. Most bank accounts that you're using for your business are going to be a checking or a savings anyway. Sometimes you get money markets. This is where you name it. This is anything you want it to be. So you want this to be Bank of America 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, so therefore you know which account that is because you have multiple Bank of America cards. You can do that. You can write, you know, payroll checking. So therefore you kind of have an option there. You know, these are more notes to yourself than they are anything else. You wouldn't really use banks as a sub account, but if you were using an income or an expense, you could make them a sub account, make this item a sub account of something else. So like down here where you see truck and then you see depreciation and original cost, this original cost and depreciation are sub accounts of truck. You know, if this were something that you needed to do most, that I would say 95%, 98% of the time, this is going to be blank. But if you needed to put an opening balance in there, you would put of this year, beginning of the month, the date, or a specific date here. But most of the time you would just leave this blank. Hit save and close. And you're good to go here. So it will just see what it is. I didn't change it to checking. I'm sorry about that. But I mean, it's a good example for being able to see why these are all banks. You know, these are all bank accounts that you've got going on, but these are what they are: checking account, savings account. This one just happens to be cash on hand. And if you needed, if we had transactions in there, you would be able to view the register from here. You can connect it to the bank account. We can go back in and edit it. Instead of having this be cash on hand, we can make it checking. And I'm just canceling it because I don't know why it wasn't. But if you went back, if that was actually able to save, you would be able to go back into you know, it would say checking here. And then again, as we talked about, make inactive, or you can run specific reports against it. And you can do that for anything. You can do that for a bank. You can do that for an asset. You can do that for any kind of expenses that you've got going on.
Hey, while we're here, I have a question that's sort of related.
Okay.
But someone has a negative accounts receivable. Any reasons why that could be?
If you issued credits or payments to a customer that you haven't invoiced out yet, that would show up as a negative on there. You know, sometimes you have, if you were in that banking section and you checked a whole bunch of invoices and put them in your bank register, and then you put them as a check against accounts receivable, sometimes that ends up being a duplicate. That ends up being more of a bank issue and a sales issue, but sometimes it will hit AR.
This was a negative balance for the last 5 years or so on the books. I'm a new treasurer for a nonprofit. So how would I go about fixing it?
You would want to put it against sales. So you would probably go in and do you know where it came from? Like, are you able to see 5 years back and see if it was was sales interested? Did you do credits that weren't supposed to be there? Can you see that information?
I think there were some credits were given back or something.
Okay.
I have to look at it further.
I can send you an email with all the steps, but there are 2 different ways to do it. So you can do it as a journal entry and apply it to just AR and those particular customers, because you're going to have to, for the list. So you're going to have to do customer A, customer B, customer C, and be able to do it and then offset it with sales. Or you can go into on the invoicing side and go customers and go in and make something for today's date, make a new invoice, and then apply that credit to it. So I don't know how many you're talking about in order to know.
I think there were 3.
Okay, so you might be, the easiest way for you is probably to go in, do a new invoice, date it for today, because we're talking 5 years from now. So we don't, 5 years ago, so we don't want to mess with any of your previous tax statements or anything like that. And I would just do it to customer A, today's date, and then you may want to, I think there's nothing here. I didn't think there would be. So you may want to go in and make a different service account that just says clear out old debt, clear out old credit, miscellaneous income, something along those lines. So then it's going to go, and then you can just do credit in your notes, credit, reverse credit from 2015 or whatever it happens to be. You know, so being the fact that you only have 3, that is probably the easiest way to do it. You know, does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions?
There's one for when we get to reoccurring transactions, but we're not there yet, so we'll wait on that one.
Okay, because I can do that now, because then after that I was going to do the forms, because it looks like memorizing transactions and customizing forms is the only one. Oh no, and then sales tax. So we can go there. So what was the question, or do you want me to just go over it first?
Why don't you go over it first and let's see if this answers the question, and then we can address the question.
Okay. So you can create reoccurring transactions. So if you know every month certain bills are going to be due, or you need to invoice certain customers for a certain service. So if we, using me, if I had a customer that I was going to invoice on the first of the month, every single month, no matter what it was, the amount stays the same for accounting services. Instead of me remembering to go in there on the first of the month or even the 31st before, emailing it to the customer or whatnot, you can save these as reoccurring transactions just to save yourself some time. You can do this with bills, you can do this with invoices, you can do this with expenses that you go through your checking account or your credit card account every single month for the same amount on the same date. And you would do that by hitting new, choosing what it is, hitting OK. You can choose, I highly doubt accounting services is going to work on this one. So we can do here, garden lighting maintenance. We're going to schedule this. We can choose to say that, create this a few days in advance. We can do a week, we can do a day. It all just depends on you and what you're looking for. So we're going to create it 3 days in advance. The customer is Cool Cars, because that's the only one I remember. What their email is should automatically pop up. You can do this too if this is going to be something that you want to print out and then you're going to mail them in the mail. You can do that, or you can just have it automatically send the email, depending on what you want. Here you choose what date, when you want it, the first of every month, the start date. You can change this to be a previous date, which it's not going to send on the previous one, but then you can do a future date of saying it's going to start February 1st, and I want it to end after, 6 occurrences. You can leave this end blank. You do not have to choose something, but you can say, you just have the option to do other things. Say net terms. This one's going to be garden lighting. I have no idea how much this is going to cost, so we can just do it as $150. You save the template, and it will start showing up here, and it's going to show that it's an invoice. It's going to happen every month starting February 1st, there it is, and then we scheduled it to just automatically email, so we don't have to worry about anything. We can, if we hit use, we can send this early, we can duplicate it to go towards another customer. You can pause it for whatever reason. So the customer decided, hey, we're having some money issues. We don't want to do this, and it's in the middle of it, but we're going to pick it back up in June. You can pause it or skip to the next date, depending on your occurrence, and then just delete it from there. So what was the question in regards to memorizing them?
It's more, so this organization downloaded their data from a different version of QuickBooks, and their recurring transactions are not showing as reminders, and they're set to do that. The next date has to be changed manually. Should she re-enter them all because maybe there was a glitch in the transfer? Or is there any other thoughts or advice about editing those?
So when you've gone in to edit it, and it does say it's scheduled, right? Is that what I heard right properly?
It says that it's set to reminder.
Oh, it's such a reminder. And
Because
it's not,
they come up in the old version, they used to come up every Thursday. That's what they were set for, because that's the day the newspaper goes out. They would come up. I would double check that the person really did have an ad in the paper and it wasn't like a special extra ad or something. And then I would, you know, apply the credit, you know, make the invoice and apply the credit. But they're not showing up, and they're not. And then when I've done it, they're not moving on to the next date like they used to in the online version.
so I would check
I mean,
here.
sorry, the desktop version. Yeah.
I would check here as well, as if there's not a start date.
Yeah, there is. That the QuickBooks
Okay.
Help people told me that. And so I put in the start date for, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I did the start date thing, and then it didn't move again when I then did this whole transaction process. It didn't move again. So I think maybe I just need, there's about 20 or 25 of them. So I could just go in and start again and enter them all and see if it works. But I just wondered if it was something you'd come across and, you know.
Yeah. So if you've already talked to them, because that would be my advice here, is to make sure the start date was changed, and from the conversation you've already done that. The only other thing I might try to think about doing is changing something here. So if you currently have it weekly for a day, I'm doing every Thursday. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe try to change it to a Saturday, to every second Saturday, or to daily, to see if it comes up tomorrow, because it might just be that it needs something to kick it out of that glitch. And then you can
Okay.
just change it back. If not, if that didn't work, just like the start date didn't work, unfortunately, you're just going to have to go in and delete them and redo them.
Okay, but basically it should work pretty much the same way as it did in the desktop version.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, all right, great.
You should,
Thank you.
since you set it up as a reminder, you'll get that little pop up, and it will say,
Yeah.
you know, however many do you want to send them? What do you want to do with it? And then you
Yeah,
change.
and that was always great. So, okay, all right, great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other recurring transaction questions, Pam? I keep looking
Not
over
at
on
this
this
time.
side, sorry.
No, I think we're good. Can you just, you know, you showed how they were scheduled and that happened automatically. Can you show for people that haven't used it, how they where the reminder list pops up?
So this right here, we don't.
Oh,
I
there
can-
are none. That's why. Okay.
So when you go into reoccurring transactions, you get your list of what's there. It shows what's scheduled, what's reminder. This reminder list, it should have shown up. Why didn't it?
Oh, is it because it only reminds you like 3 days before?
Oh, that's exactly, you know, as it's doing its thing, that's exactly what it is. It's because I used it for February 1st as a reminder, as the date. So
Okay.
if I used today, or if it was something valid, when you were going into this reminder list, this screen would look exactly like this first one, except for it would show everything that had a reminder.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do want to make sure we touch base, and I think, have you been following along, Pam? I'm pretty sure I touched base on everything except for sales tax and custom forms.
Yes, and then you were going to go back in and just show them manage users so you could see how more than one user could be shown.
So manage users, same thing, gear thing. We moved on from the list item, and I just went into manage users here. You can add a user. You can choose what you want this person to be. So they can be a standard user. You can give them any certain privileges that you want. It can be a company admin where they can have every privilege that same thing that you do, they can create and change and make journal entries and add people and stuff like that. You can also give people time tracking only if you're dealing with payroll, or reports only people if they just need to be able to see, you have a contact or somebody within your business that needs to just be able to see the reporting, and that's it. These ones do not count towards your limit. So if you only have 5 billable users, they do not count. Neither does your your accountant. So the accountant one is easy, so I'm going to just deal with that first. So most of the time you want this company and them to have access to everything. It would be your company admin. You want to use this user as an accountant. You hit next. And the internet chooses to make you wait. It's going to give you, as an admin, you're going to either enter your password or get your email code. And then the second step will actually ask you for your accountant's email. You mail it off to them. They get an invitation. When they accept it, it will show up on the accounting firms in your billable users. So you just want to make sure with the accountants that you make sure that you do this as my accountant user, so they're able to view whatever they need to view without having to go back and say, hey, can we change this? Can we change that? A standard user is where you're just your everyday user, your office manager, your receptionist, all of those people, anybody that needs it will be able to do it, your sales team, etc. And sometimes you need them to only see one side of things. So if you give them access to everything, this is the list of what they can change, what they can do. So they'll be able to set up, multi-currencies, forward receipts and bills. They deal with home currencies. They can deal with your sales tax, all your reports, your deposits, add, delete, edit things, add and create budgets and delete them, change your preferences and add and delete employees. Sometimes you don't want them to see all of that. You just have somebody that's dealing with sales. So you want to make sure that they're a limited user and that they can only see either the customer side nor the vendor side. So then again, this is just showing what they're able to do on the customer side. So if they'd be able to deal with the currencies, the invoices, sales receipts, credit memos, any kind of refunds and payments that you can accept from them, any timesheets that are connected to a customer, they'll be able to see. They'll be able to see your product, services, and whatnot, and then be able to do that. And then the same thing on the vendor side. They'll just be able to see a whole list of things that they can do here and they cannot do here. And you just want to make sure that that's appropriate for that person of what you need. Then you can hit next. Do you need them to submit their timesheet? Are they able, if you don't see them, so if you're entering a name of employee or vendor list, so that's what, if this was Emily's, you want to make sure she's the one that you can do it. Hit next. Answer these questions. These are all up to you. What you all want to allow and what you don't want to allow. Have their name, put their email address in here, and then you hit save. And then they'll the same thing. They get an invitation. They hit accept. They follow the directions, and then they'll be able to log into your company and see. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure for that stuff that you'll be able to see. And then if there was an accounting firm here, this is what I was talking about, that you were able to, you did the company admin and actually clicked accountant on the other side of it. Once they accepted, you'd have a list here of who they were, and you're allowed to users that don't count towards your billable users.
It's good to have that set up. I had a client I was working with the other day, and they have a lower version of QuickBooks, and she had made a change to after she had reconciled something. And in the higher versions, you can undo your reconcile, but in the version she has, it didn't allow her to. It would only allow her accountant to. So she was able to call the accountant, they undid it, and she was able to go back and fix it.
Yes, because that's a fantastic example, because your accountant users are able to do everything. So they can do everything within your company, and they can do everything to the highest version of QuickBooks, you know, in both desktop and online. So they can do all the stuff that you can do in advanced, and they can do all the stuff with the enterprise on the desktop version. So small little things like that is a fantastic example of why give them the ability, because they can help you too. All right.
Okay.
All right, so then these custom form styles. So you can choose things that you like in regards to QuickBooks. You can make a new invoice. Say you just don't like the standard one. You can kind of make some changes to this. You can add your logo. You can kind of make sure the fonts are different, anything like that. So you can, you know, change up the template. It gives you a couple of different options. I mean, they're not crazy different, but they're definitely, you know, gives you the options to see different ones if you hated one versus the other. So you can pick one here. You can choose your logo if you had it somewhere. I don't think I saved a picture of my thing, so I can't really do that. But if you had a logo, it will just bring, you know, as you saw, it will just bring up that Microsoft Windows pop-up. You can see which folder you have your logo in. You can upload it. It will require a certain size, and unfortunately, I didn't write that down. If you happen to have any problems, it may, if you have a larger logo, it may say, you know, we can't fit it, and you might have to reduce the size of it. But a lot of the times, you know, you're able to just kind of edit what you need in the screen, and you'd be good to go. You can try colors here. You know, if you didn't like this blue and you wanted it to be purple or green or whatever, you can kind of change them there. Same thing with your fonts. You have a small options here. You know, you can, if you didn't like them, they were too small, you needed them larger, you can change it. And then for some reason, if you needed your, you know, this to change because you were using letterhead or something, you can have this, it will all move down. You can change this for your paper if you needed the top to be 1 inch. It just moves it all down. So you can kind of do these customized things here on the first one. So.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I was like, why is it all right? So once you get your design kind of where you want it to be and something that you're acceptable, you know, you're happy with, you can change the content a little bit. So you saw in the beginning how everything was gray. You just click on the section that you want to change and you'll get up these pop-ups. So if you needed it to say you didn't like services the way that looked, you can change it to the landscaping. So it comes up here. We can add a phone number, if 555-5555, and it will change over here. You know, for some reason we didn't want the email, you uncheck it. And then the same things here is it gives you your street address and your website. If you needed to change them, you could do that. You know, and then you can decide, you know, from there, as if you like the way that looks or you don't like the way that looks, you can click for what you need. And you can have the same thing here for what you want your form to be called. You know, for some reason, if you don't want it to be invoice, you can name it XYZ, and it will just show XYZ up in the corner. You can choose not to use form numbers, or you can, you know, simple by clicking or unclicking. If you had customized transaction numbers used, you could do that as well. Same thing here, as if you had no terms or you didn't want the due date to show, you just unclick it and it leaves this section blank. It could also add a shipping date. So if you had it billed to the parent company but shipped to warehouse 1, something like that, you could have that show as well. And then the same type of thing here, if you click on the middle section, you can have it what these columns are showing you. So you can have it not include the date or include a date. You can have it have a description or not. your rates, your amounts. If you happen to have any SKU numbers, you can say, I want to group this, keep the date, but group them by day or week, whatnot. So you can customize these things to show what, whatever it is that your customers need from you and what the answers are on your invoices to be able to make it so your customers have less questions for you. You can change these to be whatever you need to do. And then down here is the same thing. If there was a deposit that the customer is paid or not paid, you can add those on here to show. You can have it be that this is also another section of where you can have your message that will just apply to every single invoice. So when we were in the gear icon and under accounts and settings, we changed it, but you can also change it here as well to say whatever you want. And then you can go to any kind of emails of what you would like it to do. So as I was saying earlier, is that you can have it summarized with this amount in this print, it would say pay and save, view and pay on there for the customer side. You can give them all the details in the statement down here, right? You can choose not to have the PDF as well. Again, if you do or you don't. And then this is the same thing, is that if you change this email setting for this particular invoice that you're doing, customer invoice that you're doing, it will change it for this message will be on every single one of them. And then the same thing down here is it will have your reminder email, whatever wording you chose will be on every single one. And then you can get done, make sure it's where you're supposed to. I don't know why it said it wasn't working at this time. So normally you would just hit save and then it would show up here. You get your custom form. You have this option here. Now everything is good. When you go into your invoices and create them here, oh, I think I'm in the wrong spot. Custom. So you can customize it so it shows which invoices you want it to show. Clearly, you're not going to name it my invoice, but you can name it whatever you want for special ones, and then it will show that information on the screen for when the customer goes to look at it. And you can do those specifications for any bills, estimates, and sales receipts. Invoices, estimates, and sales receipts that you can change.
Okay. I have 4 or 5 questions, but they're not specifically related to customizing forms. So if you want to finish with the sales tax, we can come back to the questions when we're done.
So what were we showing with sales tax? We were just showing the reports in regards to it, or?
Well, all right. So first off, when they create their invoice, they would charge sales tax because they can set that up automatically.
Yeah.
And then show them where that goes and then how they would know how much to pay.
I don't even remember, Gordon. So down here, like she was saying, is if you can set these up as we talked about previously. Each individual product and services, you can decide if it was sales tax related or not. When you can also do it here, if you had a one-off type of thing that does sales tax, you can check it here, and it says, which version do you want? So we've got that all in there for the customer. And then sales tax. So then you go into reports here. I always end up searching it. It's just habit, but you can go down here, and I believe it is under sales and customers. It is not.
What you owe, is it there?
I didn't see it, no.
Okay.
So
Sales
as you,
tax,
it
there you
actually
go.
has a sales tax section. Sorry about that, guys. But I always, you can, as I was starting to do, you can start typing up here. It's a habit of mine. I just know what they're called and I just kind of want to do it, but it will show sales tax and then it shows everything that starts in sales. Or you can come down here to the particular one. I don't think we reviewed anywhere before. You can also save these little stars or something that shows up, so they show up on the top here. They just make your favorite. So you don't have to go chasing after them. But you choose what you're paying. Is it a quarter? Is it a month? Is it whatnot? And it will be able to show your report of what sales you're supposed to do, how much your taxable income was, what your taxes were. So when you go on to Mass Tax Connect, your numbers should match. So they should be able to say $300 in sales, that was taxable. When you enter it into Mass Tax Connect, their numbers should match the 1365 as well as Mass Tax Connect. So if you do have sales tax, I definitely suggest that you change. You can even change this to be memorized on your monthly. If you do it quarterly, if you're doing it monthly for the last month, change it, customize it to however you need to when you want to run it. And that's just a matter of what you're looking for. You can save the customization and then you save it to your favorite. So then every month when you're going to look at it, you can just go have it be the form that you want it to be. And then it can be up here right at the top. So it's easy to look for.
All right.
Anything
So
we
we
didn't
are-
cover?
Well, I have a few questions. So let's start. I launched the poll for people, and while they're filling that in, we can address some of these questions. Let's see. One is, will you touch on how to add the ability for customers to pay by credit card? Does QuickBooks act as a processor?
Intuit does have payments. You would have to create an Intuit payments account. Then you would do it here under account settings, and then it's not under. Hold on. I keep clicking things and it just goes left. It is in your settings in order to set it up. You have to set up an account. You have to set up your QuickBooks payment account, and then it will connect. I can send directions on that because clearly I've missed where it's going.
Okay.
But QuickBooks is the processor, right? It's not,
Yes.
we don't connect it to our Stripe or Square account or whatever.
You have the options if you have a Stripe or a Square and you want to connect them. Just as a bank register to be recording, you can do that, but you can do a QuickBooks. There's QuickBooks payments that you set up an account with, and then they do all your payments from when. So when you said like view and pay or something on that, when you're sending invoices, it's QuickBooks payments that processes it for you.
Okay, and then it just goes straight into our bank account, right?
Correct.
Like daily or something.
Yes, it depends on what you set up for. They can do it the same day, and I think they charge a 1% fee for that, or you can just do the normal 2-day processing.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, next one. Can you show us where to go to change the date on the invoice template? I want to show the year as 22 rather than 21, as the system has automatically generated the next invoice when I hit create invoice.
So you hit create invoice, and then so it's going to like a previous date. Is that how you're hearing that, Pam? So it's going to like it's set for whatever your previous invoice was.
It looks like it, yeah. So you want to change it to like automatically come up as today?
That's how I took it. That's okay. I just want to make sure. So it is in here. Oh my God. Not what I want. So it's, why am I missing where this is? There is a form, maybe it's under advanced, that it says under your account, under your accounts and settings, it gives you an option if you want to pre-fill. Okay, so this is probably it. So your automation, so if it's pre-filling from what your previous invoice or your estimate was, along with the dates, you just want to toggle this off, you know, and then, or you can toggle it on. That's the only reason that I can think of that it would show last year's date versus today's date.
Yeah, I think that's, if it's showing the last one you did and it was last year, especially when they're at the beginning of the year, it's going to keep showing December as the date.
So I think the answer to that question is if you under advanced, under your account settings, if you go to advanced and then automation, unclicking this should solve that problem for you.
Okay. Is there any way, oh, go ahead.
Would that be unclicking it the first time and then going back, automating it? Pre-fill it with previous entered contact, so it would be.
Oh, so if we're talking a memorized transaction?
No,
I didn't think so.
it's just an invoice.
Yeah, so if you untoggle this, you could hit save. You go in and make an invoice, it should show up on today's date. And then you can just hit whatever expense or product that you need to do and put the amount in. Does that answer?
Nancy, is that good?
I'm processing it.
Pam can't answer it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question. Is there a way to show a past due amount on an invoice if someone hasn't paid their previous invoice yet?
On the invoice, no. You would have to use statements. So you'd able to, you know, if you were printing it to a customer and actually mailing it, I would suggest you print the invoice, you print the one that's past due, and yeah, and possibly even print a statement and throw it all in there. So if they had any questions, but unfortunately at the bottom, you know, there's no place for it to say like previous balance.
All right, and let's see. How do you turn on class information?
Under it, we're actually happen to be right here. So if you
Oh,
go to
wait,
account settings,
No, never mind. I think I misunderstood the question. It said, I would like to access the class information so that I can review from home. I think she means the video. So sorry about that.
no problem. But for anybody that did need to do advanced, and then you can track classes and locations here, and it's the same thing of a toggle switch. Yes or no, do you want to put it?
All right. And there's a question, will you be touching on 1099s? So
I wasn't planning on it. I mean, just how to set up and track them. Is that kind of the question you're asking?
Brenda, is that what you're looking for?
She answered yes in the chat.
Okay.
Yes, that is.
Okay. So
Thank you.
when you go into your vendors, when you were setting them up, there is an option here. You set them up, you're entering in all their information. You want to put all their information down here. So you want to be able to put, you know, social security number, their EIN number, track payments for 1099. This is a really good habit for you to be able to be getting the W-9s as you're setting up new vendors, or so you can just have that information. Sorry, excuse me. And then you hit save and close. Do that for all your vendors. And then at the end of the year, There is a 1099 summary report. I highly doubt anything's going to come up on here with the sample one, but I'm not sure. So it was a 1099 transaction detail, and it will divide them out by your vendor and how much money you've spent with them every year. So you would have this report and it would say Bob's Burger Joint, and it would show each one of those payments that were there, and then it would have a total, and then it would do the same thing of like Crystal's bookkeeping, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, perfect.
So you
Okay.
would have this 1099 if you sent them up on that vendor side properly and had all the right information in there, you should be able to just run this through transaction detail for the dates you want, and it should show it all up. It should show
Great.
everything you need.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. That I think was the last question. Did I miss any? Oh, can we issue the 1099s?
You can issue the 1099s through QuickBooks Online, but there is an extra fee. So you will pay QuickBooks. I'm not sure the price. I want to say it's $4 per 1099, but don't quote me on the exact pricing. But if you go in, there's an option that QuickBooks has a thing that says pay 99 or prepare 1099, and then you just follow the directions and they do it for you.
All right. Well, we got through all the questions, all the materials, and we're right on time at 10:32.
Yay!
Thank you, everybody, for filling out the poll. Thank you for participating in this workshop. We hope it was helpful to you. If you have questions that come up in the future and you need some advice on them or where to find something, feel free to email me. If I can't find the answer, I will reach out to someone that can help find the answer. Thank you, Crystal. You did a wonderful job. Great presentation.
Thank you.